So, my name is Alex, and I've been putting something off for a couple years now. Uh, I've been feeling for a long time to put together some sort of support group for men uh, who deal with or dealt with postpartum depression. Um, I need to make a disclaimer that I'm not a mental health worker. I have worked around different aspects of mental health, as well as, obviously see my own therapist or whatever. But postpartum depression and other forms of depression, anxiety disorders, and things like that are a very serious thing. Um, and I'm not claiming to know 100% what women go through. I'm not claiming to know what any individual goes through. A lot of what I'm speaking of is based off of my experience and people that I've encountered in life. Uh, I met the love of my life. We fell head over heels. Got married very fast. Had a baby even faster. I wouldn't change a thing. Um, I was working swing shift. Uh, I was reluctant to have a child just because I think it's a very serious thing that I'm not really prepared for. But when I met the love of my life, and that's what she wanted, I was willing to give her anything. Um, into the pregnancy, I noticed things changing. Uh, and I just chalked it up to the hormones and stuff, and I didn't know really what was going on. I still don't know. But after the child was born, uh, I noticed my wife kind of not all there. Um, and we would argue a lot, and she'd be telling me she didn't want me around. She didn't, the typical couple stuff. I'm done. I don't love you anymore. All this crazy stuff. That no one wants to go through. I was working swing shifts. I'd come home, take care of her, take care of the baby. I'd get up early, running on 2 to 4 hours of sleep half the time, and stay with the child. After she went back to work at that point, but um, you know, there was periods where like the kid would be crying, and I would look at her, and it was almost like she wasn't even there. She didn't hear the kid crying, and you've heard all these horror stories of women in the past, and the awful thing that they've gone through, and some of the tragic situations that have occurred. Naturally, like, those fears come to your mind as a father. You know, um, I guess for me, what doesn't get talked about when we're talking about postpartum is what the husband goes through, as well as the child. Um, I was constantly feeling rejected, pushed away, dealing with a stressful job, and then all I could think about and want was to come home to my wife, come home to my child. It was supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and for the most part, it was. Like, here's this incredible life, it's in front of me, and it's the most absolute scary thing I've ever gone through. But I've never loved anyone in my life like I love my wife, and my child. things got really bad. I'd sleep on the couch. Uh, she'd wake up and start yelling at me. I'd sleep in my car in the driveway. She'd come out and start yelling at me. I had no clue what the fuck was going on. Reality is, I just thought like she fucking hated me, and I still don't know what was going on with her. I have my own issues. Early trauma, um, depression issues, anxiety issues, and all I want in the world is, to be loved, especially by the one that I love the most. And after 6 months, almost a year of being made to feel like I wasn't important, I didn't matter, I was unlovable, watching my child scream, because I had to leave all the time. Like the neighbors would say, we always know when you're leaving because your kid cries. And, the sounds of his tears and his screams in my head, would echo for the longest times, because all I wanted was to be home with my son and my wife. What that does to a man. Like, all I wanted was to just be home. And it just got physically to the point where I couldn't be around because I was getting yelled at, emasculated, talked down to, just verbally assaulted. And I couldn't let my son see that. And I physically and emotionally couldn't put up with it. Now, mind you, at that point I had no fucking clue what was going on or what I was doing wrong. And I'm in no way, shape, or form excusing my behavior. Or saying that what I did was right. I turned to another woman when she gave me attention. It made me feel like I was worth something. And it was wrong. Now, a lot of really fucked up shit went on at home that I don't like to talk about, or, because to me it's like it wasn't my wife. There was this completely other person there that I had no clue who the fuck it was. I had no clue. That's not who I married, and that's not who I was in love with, you know? And what seemed to be an innocent situation wound up turning into a more complex situation. And the more I felt shitty at home, and the better I felt somewhere else, I thought that was my out, or that was going to fix what was going on with me. And all it did was make things worse, you know? Not only could I not be home because my wife was yelling at me all the time and didn't want me there and, wanted me gone, so then I was gone. But then because I was gone, when she wasn't in her moments of rage, it made her feel like she was abandoned. And a woman who sits at home with a newborn child who has postpartum depression going on, it's got to be the most anxiety causing I imagine probably feeling lost within yourself, not knowing what to do. But I was extremely selfish. I was hurting inside. I had no clue what was going on, and I was just trying to feel better. And even though wouldn't come home, or I might have been with another woman, or even if I was completely by myself, sleeping in my car down the street, because that happened a lot too, so I wouldn't get hit and yelled and all that shit, In my heart and in my soul, all I ever wanted was to just be home with my wife and my son. Now, things progressively got worse at home. How could it not progressively got worse at home? My mind wasn't there, my heart wasn't there, and even though I was being subjected to a certain kind of treatment, what I try to speak to men about when we happen to just come up in conversation is to not do what I did, and to get their partner the help that they need. We had tried couples counseling, other shit, whatever, and it wasn't until she found an actual specialist who was able to diagnose her with postpartum depression that everything made sense, and she was able to get some help and on the path towards getting help. It was finally like, okay, we can identify what's going on here. The postpartum depression, in my opinion, brought out a lot of other deep-rooted traumas and issues that were going on within her too, which made things seem way worse. And then here I am, being a shitty husband, leaving her to feel unsupported, leaving her to feel unloved, regardless what I was being put through, right? Like, I have to stop being selfish when I talk about how shitty I was being treated. And it was bad. Like, it was real fucking bad. But when you love someone and they're supposed to be your partner, you have to look out for them. And by that point, I was so deep in my own lies and my own deception and my own pain and my own misery and darkness that I couldn't see any way outside of it. I hated lying. And in some ways, I kind of felt I would get, or hoped that I would get caught so I could stop living a lie. But that's always kind of been my thing, like self-sabotage, I destroyed so many of my, juvenile relationships with shitty behavior, so I would have someone that I cared about tell me how shitty I was, because in the long run I always just thought I was a shitty person and I deserved to be treated shitty because I never deserved to be happy. Like, that's weird stuff that happens to small children in early ages, when they watch their parents behave a certain way or they get treated a certain way, and they identify with shitty feelings as how they're supposed to feel normally, which is typically of my behavior, why I seek after women that are emotionally unavailable, right? But, there's a lot to this story, and I was speaking to someone the other day who had a similar story, and I've, hinted at I should start a support group, just to give men a place to go, because a lot of men have no fucking clue what's going on. And a lot of us do stupid shit when in reality, we as men need support. Our wives need support. Our children need support. It's traumatic to children to watch their parents argue, or to feel tension, or to see one of their parents have to leave because they don't get along. All that child wants is its mother and its father. We had the lovely fortune of having a very sensitive and intuitive child as well. So he picks up on things way before we do, which most kids do, right? I don't really know what I'm trying to achieve, but to get honest, and maybe, help some men out there that are struggling or have struggled with this kind of a situation. And I'm sure there's a lot of women that might think that I'm a monster or an insensitive prick, but we as individuals have to learn to support one another. Like, men have no understanding of postpartum, or even like what it's like. I mean, even you talk to my grandmother and she's like, postpartum wasn't a thing when I was having kids. Like, that's how they think. They think that that's, it's a new thing, but it's really not. I've watched my relationship go through some of the worst, nastiest shit, and my wife found out, and then was kicked out, and, she started seeing someone else, and then, God, who wants that, right? And there's a whole lot of mess between us. But then we decided to reconcile and try to make things right. But there's a lot of pain inside. And it's hard to trust and it's hard to forgive. But it's also hard when, like, as people, we don't want to be real. We don't want to be raw. We don't want to say this hurts, or this is what I'm going through, or you make me feel like this, or this situation makes me feel like this, or I'm scared to love you. I'm scared to trust you, because for me, like, it's hard. It's been hard for me to trust my wife, because, and I guess that's what's hard for me too, is like, I don't feel like she knows or will ever know how hurt I really was before I ever did anything or strayed. Like, the pain that I went through on a daily basis when I was like forced to be away from my child, or forced to be away from my wife because of the postpartum depression and what it did to her. But see, the thing of it is it's not her fault, because she didn't know. She wasn't in control of that. So at some point, we have to have compassion and mercy for one another, you know? And that's why I try so hard when I speak to men to, like, prevent them from making mistakes that I did, or living in a relationship where they're ignorant to what's going on with their partner. I mean, as soon as I hear a friend who's had a child and they're going through a situation that's similar, I say, please, like, contact someone for your wife's sake, you know? Because I don't want that woman to have to suffer silently like my wife did. And you know, I'm not perfect. I've made more mistakes in this marriage than I've probably ever made in the course of my dating history. And I've made a lot of mistakes. But the hardest and realest thing has been to admit when I'm afraid and when I don't know, because you don't want to show vulnerability, right? That's how we're conditioned to be as men. You know, pain's a real thing, and it makes us do a lot of stupid shit. You know, when she's hurt or afraid, you know, she lashes out at me, yelling, whatever, you know. When I'm afraid, I do my own introverted, like, weird shit, you know. And, you know, when I'm hurt, I disappear. I'll hop on my motorcycle and I'll go for a ride just to clear my head. The reality of that is that triggers her to have anxiety. And that triggers her to feel like she did when I was doing stupid shit. And I put friendships before my wife. I put a lot of things before my wife that should have never come before my wife. And she might not feel the same way. Like, her look on the relationship is different. Like, to her, like, she doesn't care if I come or go. Like, she'll keep living her life. But to me, the way I feel about her is like, if she wasn't in my life, it's an extremely devastating thing. And I know that obviously with time it heals and you can move forward, but the way I look at it is like, she was the most important, precious thing ever given to me, and we created a child. And so for that, she should have the most respect and honor given to her. Women often don't think like that about their partners or men. There are a lot of women out there who, and I don't want to sound like I'm speaking in generalities, you know, but they don't really think about their men like that either. You know, it's been probably 2 to 3 years now since my wife and I have tried to reconcile. It's kind of at a very broken spot right now. I don't believe that she has postpartum per se today, but she does have other health and mental issues going on. I have my own mental issues going on. Who doesn't, right? We live in this stressful world based off of consumerism, and we live outside of our means, and that in itself causes depression and anxiety, right? But when you love someone who does struggle with their own mental health, what can we do? You know, I don't know. I try to find answers for that every day. It was like the scariest shit I ever went through, watching my wife go through that. Here's the person that you married, that you fell in love with, and you have no fucking clue who they are anymore or how to help them. And my story is, by the time we had a clue, I fucked up. I broke a trust. I broke a trust that's almost impossible to repair, unfortunately. And the person that I love the most in this world has a hard time forgiving me for that. Postpartum depression affects women differently, so I don't know what other women go through. I've had friends who have had children who have experienced some things, and it's scary, like, one of the saddest things for me right now is, my wife missed out on a lot of my son's earlier time, because she wasn't all there. And so for her, she tries to hold on or make up for it, and that's hard to do because, as parents, you see your child grows very fast and changes, and you'll never get back those tiny little baby moments, which are some of the most incredible moments to have with them. I mean, I don't know what the whole point of this is except for me to try to, like, get some shit off my chest, because I feel like for 4 years now, no one's fucking listened or heard me. But to the men that are out there, you gotta be patient, and you gotta get your wife help, and you got to support her 120% more than she's capable of doing for herself and for that child as well. You have to, like, do way more. For the women who have no clue what's going on with them, be patient and ask for help. There's a lot of good knowledge out today, more than there ever was about it, and there are a lot of specialists that can help you. And just remember that the child's the most important thing too, like, we have to think about their needs in these times too, and it's easy for them to be neglected, when we're dealing with our own shit going on. They warn you that, about postpartum, but you have no clue what the signs are, because after your child's born, you're just like, here, figure it out, And for women who have overcome it, reach out to other women, reach out to their spouses, because as men, like, we don't talk about postpartum. We don't talk about how it affects us or how it affects our children, And again, like, I'm not excusing my behavior. It was the most fucked up behavior that I regret, but this is about the postpartum and how it affects children, how it affects the fathers, how it affects the mothers, I'm going to be looking into a space where men can come and meet. Obviously, I'm in the Los Angeles area, so it's going to be a little bit tough for people who don't live close to here, but I want to believe that there is probably support groups for men out there. I just know locally here there really isn't anything. To offer men in a safe space to come talk and not feel lost, when it comes to what's going on at home. Because for me, the family unit is very important. And for me, there's so much out there that tries to destroy it, let alone our own actions. and we have to come together and stay strong for the sake of the child and for the sake of each other. If any of this gets out to anybody and it makes sense, feel free. If you can relate, if you think that I'm just a rambling idiot, that's fine too. I don't care. But I welcome constructive criticism. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't really know shit about any of it. It's just been, 4 years of a crazy journey for me as a father, and as an individual and a husband. But as I get more information and as I try to dig deeper on different topics that happened in that time, I'll post videos about it. But mainly I just needed to get that off my chest, like that I carry around a huge burden for what I did to my wife and what that did to my son too. Being a person who was going through a situation involved with postpartum and, loving someone who has mental health issues as well as yourself. So, thanks for watching me ramble for about a half hour.